All right, so let's review the intermediate challenge. Cool. So question number 1, search. I'm going to skip it. Question number 2, that's a really good question. So you're going to face similar issues on a daily basis pretty much in your life. So that's why this question is so good. So what we got here is, we have a list of characters and we're going to identify the top one. How do we know who is the top character? Well, based on the average score. So whoever has the highest average score is the top character. So I would like to show you 2 ways of solving the problem. Then obviously we'll go through your code and see which one do you choose. First of all, we need to get the average, right? That's for sure. If we didn't get that, we're lost. But if we read the instructions, we see score, taking the score average or the average score as a source of truth, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function to get the average. We reviewed that, I think, on Friday, literally, right? We created a function, so I'm going to go through this process quickly. Get average. So we receive a list of scores, and then we return scores or reduce. You return that average score, and then, and then what? Then, can anyone complete this line for me? Say it again, Gideon. Like that?
Divided by 4 lengths.
Correct. Fantastic. Yeah? So the function will give me the average. Once again, I'm not following any sort of chronological order. Yeah, I'm just preparing the exercise. All right, so tell me, what's the argument name? If the function is called get top character, characters, fantastic. I hope no one label the argument as string or array or X or cities or weird things, right? Characters. So now, 2 ways of solving the problem. First of all, naturally speaking, I want to sort the array. Yeah? I want to sort the array. So my first approach will be to do characters.sort. Remember sort? We also reviewed that on Friday. So we compare by pairs, right? So character A or character 1 and character B or character 2. That doesn't really matter, right? So now, I need to compare the average score of each character. So how do I get character A score? Can anyone complete this line for me?
We just call that function,
And then what?
and then you could invoke it with character. Sorry, I'm getting confused.
Character A.
Dot scores.
Correct. Yeah? And then pop, the same thing with character B, right? So let's get the average. And then, if I want to sort the array descendantly, that means the top character goes first.
B minus A.
That's correct, Sarah. Remember, B minus A descendantly, A minus B ascendantly. All right. And then what? That will give me the sorted array, but I don't want the sorted array. I want the name of the top one.
So
Square bracket, where?
just
Here?
no, after the yeah, on line 6,
Yeah, here?
just before the semicolon,
Yeah,
0,
yeah.
dot name,
Dot name, that's correct, yeah? So sort will give us the array, the sorted array. So give me the first one, and out of that one, return the name. Will this work? Let's figure it out. Yes, yeah, nice. Cool, let's change the algorithm a bit. What happens if I'm going to change something here? Yeah, now it's not A, B minus A. Now it's A minus B. So what do we need to change?
Do we need to reverse?
So yeah, I changed the line. Now it's A minus B. I want to keep the line as it is because of whatever dark reason. 0. What, Johnny, should we put here? That's interesting. What do you think? Ooh, Nico disagreed with you, Johnny. He said -1. Why, Nico?
Because you get the total length and then take away 1 to get the last value.
Correct, because arrays start at 0 index, right? That's correct. What happens if I run that? As it is. Undefined? Are you sure?
Yeah,
I think that will throw an error. That will throw an error. Let's have a look. Here you go. Cannot read property name of undefined. In other words, that, oh, where's my cursor?
because we out of range.
Yeah, so that, correct. So that will return undefined. Undefined.name explodes, right? However, if we do -1, then it works fine. All right, so this was just an example, right? But my main point wasn't there. My main point is, even though that code is correct, it's not extremely performant. Why? You can imagine, let me rephrase that. If I have an array of 10 elements, does anyone know how many times these 3 lines of code will run?
Say again. If you have what? How many elements?
10 elements.
9 times? 9? No.
I cannot give you the answer. I don't know how many, but probably way more than 10. Because don't forget that we have to compare all the pairs. The first with the second, with the third, with the fourth. Yeah? So I don't know. I'm sure there is a way to calculate the number. 10 power, I don't know. But the thing is, many times, right? Because that code will run many times. What's the point of, if I compare character, the first character with the second, with the third, with the fourth, with the fifth, what's the point of getting the average every single time? The average is not going to change for each character, right? So why don't we calculate the average once, and then we just compare the average? You get my point? So from an efficiency perspective, that's not great. I mean, it works fine, only 3 characters. From a human point of view, we're not going to spot any difference. But again, that's not the most efficient way to solve the problem. So let me show you a better approach. Before sorting, I'm going to map the array. Do you remember map? Map returns an array of the same size. So we transform each individual character. So for each character, look, the name, what it is. I want to respect the name. But we originally had something called character.scores, right? I don't care about the scores. So I'm going to add a new property, score. So now, you see? So for each object of the array, we have name and scores in plural. Now, for each object of the array, we have the name, so the name hasn't changed, but rather than having an array of scores, we have just the average. You can rename it if you want. It doesn't matter. Yeah? I'm transforming objects. Why am I doing that? Because once I have the list of average scores, then look at the indentation changes. Sort, again, character A, comma, character B. So can anyone complete this line for me, please? Return what?
Character B dot score or average score.
character A B dot what?
What's the projector? Average score.
Is it that small?
No, like how you've written it
Ah,
there.
okay, yeah. Minus what?
Character A dot average score.
So that's correct. Do you agree with me that now the code is more performant? Because if we got 10 elements, 10 characters, how many times we're calculating the score, the average score of each of them?
Once for each.
Once per each, correct. So 10 characters, we call getAverage function 10 times. It's more performant. It's more performant. So, first of all, let's see if it works. Yeah, of course it works, right? So that is better. However, I think we can improve it even more. Do you remember this morning when talking about hooks that we've been referring to array destructuring? So if we have let scores equals 3 and 5, we could do let score 1, score 2 equals score. Do you remember that? So with objects, we can do the same thing. If we have an object called user, first name Peter, last name Smith, of course, we can do let first name equals user.firstName, and then last name user.lastname. We can do that, right? That's fine, that's fine. However, there is a shorter way to write this code with modern JavaScript. You can do that. Look, let curly braces, first name, last name equals user. So this line is equivalent to these two lines. And how can we read it? The way we read that is, please go to the user, find a property called first name, here you go, and assign the value, Peter, to a new variable called first name. And likewise, go to user, find a property called last name, here it is, and save the value, Smith, into this new variable. Okay? So this line is equivalent to these two lines. Actually, I'm spoiling partially the intermediate board challenge that you have available. All right, so based on that, look at how sexy this is. So now, here, look, can anyone tell me how to destructure character? I don't want to type character dot character dot character dot all the time. I just want to access name and scores.
Where you've written character, you need to have curly braces with name and then average score. Is that right?
Name, no, Johnny is right. Name and scores, right? Because these are the properties that we want to inspect.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah? So this is like a zip file. You want to explore the content of the file directly. And just one thing here, you can see many red text. This is because if you destructure as on the argument, you need the parentheses and then problem solved. Why this is more convenient? Because now, look, you see that? Gone. The code is simpler. Does it make sense? And one more thing, another trick of modern JavaScript. Whenever you have that, whenever you have an object and the key is the same as the value, name equal name, that's it. Even simpler. Right? And one more thing. Let's improve it even more. Do you remember that when we have an arrow function with curly braces, we can get rid of them and get rid of the return statement? So we can do the same thing here. Yeah, we need to be careful. So I just remove the curly braces. Now I remove the return statement. But because I'm returning an object, these curly braces can get confused with these ones. So always the way to solve it is with parentheses. You see, with parentheses, now this will be immediately returned. And remember, when you use parentheses like that, you cannot use the semicolon. Semicolon makes sense when you have multiple statements. When you return something, when you return an expression, you don't need it. And if you want, then you can move everything a bit around to keep your code a bit more compact. Yeah? And then you can even move this to a new line, like that. So you can see how much we are optimizing the code. And likewise, can you tell me, guys, how to remove the, I don't want to type return here. So what else do we need to change?
Get rid of the semicolon.
Get rid of the semicolon, good point. Curly braces. And what else? Correct. I never, even though that will work, two options. Either you keep it in one line, like that, which in this particular case is too long, but technically speaking is still correct. Or if you want to move it to a new line, please, always parentheses. Parentheses never hurt. So if you don't know if you need to put them or not, just drop them, like that. You see? Any questions? So let's see if it works. It still works. So this is, to me, one of the most beautiful questions on the intermediate training program. I think it's fantastic. You see how much we managed to optimize it. You can play a lot. There's a lot of use. There's a lot of, vitamins here. All right, so let me have a look to your code. Here you go. So that was question number 2. First of all, let's try to figure out why it didn't work for Gideon. So first of all, details. Not a big fan of the name, to be honest. But anyway, that's an array. Details, so for each detail, he's saving a new property called the average. Correct. And then details.sort b.average minus a.average 0.name. That's interesting. I cannot spot anything immediately. So, can anyone see why this code doesn't work?
I used to do for each.
No.
No.
It should be fine. Let's do something. Let me copy it and let's play with it because the code looks right, Gideon. The code looks right. All right, so maybe if we run it, we'll get some errors and that will help us to understand what's going on. Look. Cannot read property reduce of undefined. I found it. Yes. Let's see if anyone can find what the problem is. Thanks to the error, I quickly managed to find the problem.
When he's dividing, he's dividing at the wrong place.
He's dividing, he's getting the total first. And once the total is calculated, he's divided by the number of elements of the array. So total divided by size of the array, the classic way. So that algorithm is correct.
Is the way he says these scores.
Correct. That's the problem. What's wrong here?
Well, details is part of the first function, not the second function.
Details. What type of data details is?
It's an array.
It's an array, that's correct. So the point is, we access each individual detail, but then, what do we do with that variable? Are we using it at all? That will generate the same result. So we receive the argument with the detail.
Are you supposed to put detail?
Then what, Gideon?
Should be without S.
Should we what?
Without S.
Correct. Where? On the left or on the right? Or both? Left, right? Left, right? Like a body pump session, left, right, up and down. So some people say left. Like that? So that means that's correct, right? Again, details is an array. Don't try to do details dot first name dot last. This is an array. This is not going to work. So scores apply on each individual element. So no one really can see the problem here.
You get rid of
I
scores.
see is detail and again is details with S.
With S.
Yes.
Where? Here? So you think that's correct?
No, it's incorrect.
It-
No, it's wrong.
It's wrong. Okay, so what's wrong?
So, it has to be get out with detail, the score, without S.
Okay, let's do something. I was assuming that that was clear for everybody, but because if not, because it is not, let's go to DevTools. And in DevTools, I'm going to open a new snippet. So let's pray for Google Chrome. I will do it, I promise. Where is my DevTools? Oh, fantastic, it closed automatically. Brilliant, that's exactly what I needed. Thank you, Chrome. Let me try again. Inspect. No, I cannot see DevTools. That's a bit weird. Hello, Chrome. I want to open DevTools. Let me try incognito. That's weird. So now DevTools is not even open, right? You see why it's getting worse, right? I mean, I'm not doing anything complicated, right? Click inspect. Where is DevTools? It's nowhere. Right. I'm going to do manual DevTools. So manual DevTools is, I would like to add a breakpoint here. You remember the debugger thingy? To stop. So I'm stopping at that line. And if I hover details, it will return something like that. Details equals name Boris. Scores, whatever. Yeah? This is what details is. So what details dot scores returns? Why undefined, Mountain? Correct, correct. The dot notation only makes sense when we work with objects. User.first name, user.email. But here, we don't have an object. We have an array of objects. So that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense neither. If you want to access an object, then you could do details of 0 or dot scores, for instance, that will make sense, or details 1, or details 2, or details 3. Yeah? So you access each individual object. But details dot scores doesn't make any sense, because details is not an object, as simple as that. So what Gideon was trying to do here, details dot for each. So thanks to for each, we got access to each individual object. That will be the first one, then detail will refer to the second one, then detail will refer to the third character, yeah? So he was trying to add a new property, which is okay, that's fine. A new property called average. So where do we need to add the average property? To which variable? Am I speaking Chinese, guys? No, seriously, because, I mean, the thing is, if you don't understand that, there is no point of continuing with the review of this challenge, right? Because this is the most simplistic thing we can catch up, right? I'm fine to spend the next 4 weeks explaining the line of code, but it doesn't make sense to progress until you understand that. So if you don't understand that, let me know what don't you understand. Because to me, it's just, I cannot be in your brain. I don't really know what is complicated here. Lisa, you know, okay, what don't you get? So what are you waiting? Are you waiting for me to ask you what don't you understand? So that's not the way it works, guys. You need to be a bit more proactive. Yeah, if something is not clear, I mean, I know these things already. I'm not here to prove that I know these things. I'm here to help you to understand these things, right? So for me, sometimes complicated to see if you're not giving any feedback because it's obvious or because it's obvious that you don't understand it, right? So please. I need questions, guys. So to me, the answer, I don't understand anything, is not a valid answer, right? You need to drive the conversation. You don't understand, but why? What exactly? What is missing? What is wrong?
I guess I understand when you're giving the mapping of for each, but I think it, why are you, what's the point you're trying to make by doing the details.average part?
So Gideon, this
Yeah.
is what we did.
Yeah,
What
so
we
we're
did.
still just trying to look at why Gideon got that wrong.
So the idea was, let's add a new property called average. So once I have a new property in my object, so look, the object, let's draw the object. So this is the original object, right? So whatever. So this is the original object. So what Gideon was trying to do is he was trying to add a new property called average. So that was his plan, right? And now, because he already has a new property called average, then it's much easier to sort the array, as he did here. Yeah? Once we have the average, look at how simplistic the exercise is. Just sort it, so put the highest average on top, get the first element, and return the name. So that was the plan. And I think the idea, again, is good. I'm not against the idea. I like it. But now, you said you don't, not you individually, generally speaking. So that's not clear. Why? Please ask any particular questions. So, what's the problem?
The problem is that when you run the for each method, you're looking at each element in an array.
Correct?
And so you've labeled each one when you've, inside the for each method, you've put in a function, and in that function you've passed an argument.
Correct?
Which you've labeled as detail.
Correct?
Typically what you should be doing is something with each element.
That's why you look, right? Why you go one by one? Because you want to manipulate them one by one. You want to add that average property to each individual element. So once again, what's wrong?
And then you wrote details.
Where? On the left or on the right?
Both.
So in the first iteration, details equals this object. So now we want to add a new property to detail argument, right? So detail.average, that means pop, pop, pop. Let's add a new property equals whatever the number is. But the argument we're passing is this one, right? The scores of that individual character. Likewise, iteration number 2, detail refers to this object. So once again, let's add a new property called average to that individual element, and now get the average. The average out of what? Out of detail.scores, this here. And on the third iteration, this is detail in singular. So once again, let's add a new property, average, and what's the value? The result of calling the getAverage function, passing that particular array of scores. Does it make sense? Right. So, guys, I'm assuming you understand that. Of course, we're here to help. But if you don't understand that, and you don't ask for help, we cannot help you. I hope you agree on that. So silence is not an option. So please, questions?
So everything you just said, that every time you do that, it creates a new average. That's what the detail.average equals get average. That's what that line is doing. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
This line is adding that thingy on the right. Likewise, can I do that? So if I do that, I'm appending key and value, right? I'm modifying the array. And what if I now do that? Look at the change. I'm passing the index to for each. So now if I type detail dot index equals index, then what? What will happen here? Index what? Zero, correct, because we start at 0, right? On the next one, index what? 1. And on the last one, index 2. So we can do whatever we want with the object, right? We iterate on each element, and for each element we transform it. Does it make sense? What if I do detail dot weird equals detail dot name dot split dot reverse dot join? Please complete the line. What will happen if I do that? But here, let me put it on the right hand side. Weird is what?
0.
0?
0. 0.
Ah, 0. Like that?
Yes, that's how I would spell Cyril.
And what? And here what?
Written.
And finally here?
Yes.
It doesn't really matter, right? But I hope you get the idea. You iterate over each element and then you modify it for each. Any questions?
I didn't know that you can change the array by for each.
Yes, with for each, you can change the array. Other question is whether we should do that or not. But because I can find this conversation is pretty intense, I'm not going to go that deep, right? I'm going to accept that for now. All right, so once we do that, let me remove it, I believe it should work. Look back to how it looked like originally, just by putting detail in singular. Yeah, so he's adding a new property, average, and then he's just sorting it. And then it works. So that was the only thing. Yeah? So that's a classic problem. If you got an array of cities, plural, and then for each city you have name and the population, right? Then, sorry, that's an array, right? Never ever do that. That doesn't make sense. Cities is an array. Name of which element? The first, the second, the third, that doesn't make sense, right? So, if you want to access the first element, like that. The second city, like that. The third city, like that. Can you tell me how to transform? All right, so I got an array of cities. So, I'm going to drop an atomic bomb on each one. So the population is going to be divided by 2. Sorry for the semantics of the exercise, right? Let's do something a bit more friendly. Let's capitalize the name of the cities, right? It's probably a bit more friendly. So how do we modify the array of cities so the name is written in capitals, in big letters?
So, you do name, no, city,
Cities,
square bracket,
square bracket,
then the index.
what's the index?
But if you want to, like for Vienna,
I want to change all the cities. I don't know if I have 1 or 1 million. For each. For each. And then what? And then what? What, sorry? City name, what else? That's it. Yeah, so you iterate over the list and then you change the property.
But the thing is, you're modifying the original array.
That's correct.
It's like, yeah, you should not.
Yeah. That's another. I'm not supposed to drop an atomic bomb on each city either, right? So we're not talking about whether we should do that or not. We're talking about, technically speaking, that's correct. It works, correct. You can do it. Lisa, how does it look like? Do you understand this highlighted code? Okay, so then I have a question for you. Now I want to display the names of the cities all in lowercase. I want to get rid of any capitals. So Lisa, how do we do that? Cities dot what? Correct, for each, fantastic. And then what? Anyone can help Lisa? City, correct. Arrow function. It's always the same thing. It doesn't matter if you use map for each. The syntax is the same, right? Which is a good thing because you get used to it quickly, I hope. And then Lisa. So we're going to check for each city. Yeah? So for each object here, I want to change the name. Regardless of what the name is, I want to get rid of all the capital letters. So Lisa, how do we access the name of each city? Cities, like that? I don't know. What sort of data cities is? I don't know. What type of data cities is? It's an array. So we cannot do that. City is the name of which city? The first, the second, the third? We got the city here, right? The individual city. That's what we want to update. So for each city.name equals what? Cities in plural again? I don't know. City, what? Dot name, yes. Correct, you see? That's correct, Lisa. It's not that complicated, right? It's just about practicing. Oh, do you know why Cam scored 90 points today? Do you think Cam is smarter than anyone else? Do you think he has a natural ability for coding that no one else here has? Well, maybe. But that wouldn't be my first opinion. Of course, not on the other way around either. But if you go to the Hall of Fame and you scroll down, and you keep scrolling down, eventually you will see how much Cam has been training. 271 exercises. Once again, there are no shortcuts for success in life. Or if you know any, let me know, because I will pay for it. Yeah, it's all about practicing, practicing, and practicing. The more you practice, the better. Cool. So back to our code. I hope you got the point of using for each. Yeah. So once again, because that conversation was pretty intense, I'm not going to argue any further. Yeah. I just find this is correct. Cool. So what else? So yeah, let me quickly go through. Let's go to question 4 because we are running out of time, and I really want to do the last question. Sorry, guys. I think it's worth to spend as much time as necessary with these things. So question number 5. Let's do 5 and 4. Are consecutive numbers? Are consecutive numbers. So we receive an array of numbers, and we're going to check whether they are consecutive or not. Okay, so I'm going to use my favorite method in any programming language, which is reduce. Numbers.reduce. And now, what's the first argument of reduce? The accumulator. But I don't like to call it the accumulator, as you already know. So I will rename it to total. No, wrong. Total makes sense if you want to add numbers. But here I don't want to add any numbers. I want to have a Boolean. Are they consecutive or not? Yeah? So are consecutive. And then what's the second argument? The number. Yeah? All right. And what's the default value? Are consecutive. So I'm going to assume that by default, I have a consecutive list of numbers. That's my assumption. So my default value is true. And then if at any time the numbers are not consecutive, I will change it to false. Yeah? All right. So return. Generally speaking, we can do number equal. So imagine that we got our numbers are 1, 2, and 3. Let's keep it easy, keep it simple, right? So if our list of numbers is 1, 2, or 3, then what? How do we get, what's the first number? 1, correct. How do we check the previous? Numbers.length minus 1? No. First of all, is there any previous number? No. How do we know if there is anything before the current number?
Index is 0.
Index. But where is the index coming from?
You can pass it to the reduce function.
That's correct, Sarah. Look, we can pass a third argument, which is the index. So now, then what? How do we check the previous number? Like that?
No.
No. How?
Index minus 1.
Index minus 1?
No, doesn't make any sense.
Is it checking the value of the previous number?
No.
The numbers is the last index.
Thank you, Max. So that means if a number is the same as the previous number, but we don't really want that, right? We don't want to check if all the numbers are the same. We want to check if they're consecutive. So how do we know if this number is, if these two numbers are consecutive? So again?
If it's minus 1. then
Minus 1 where?
If it equals 1, I think.
Ah, okay, so you want to subtract a number minus equal to what, Nico?
1
Like that?
equals 1.
Equal 2 equals 4?
Free.
3. All right, so if a number minus the previous one is 1, that means they are consecutive, right? 3 and 2. 3 minus 2, 1, consecutive. 3 and 1. 3 minus 1, 2, not consecutive, right? All right, so if they're consecutive, what? If they're consecutive, true for now. Else, false. More or less, more or less. That's obviously not correct yet. Let's evaluate it. It's not correct. Can anyone tell me why, based on this algorithm, we are asserting that 1, 3, and 4, I'll put it here, 1, 3, and 4 are consecutive?
Because of the first argument.
Wrong. Let's do our reduce table. Iteration number 1. What's the value of R consecutive?
Because it's doing, is it doing 0 minus 1 equals 1?
I don't know. Let's have a look. R consecutive, iteration number 1. What's the first value? True, correct. What's the value of number? 1. Return. Return what?
True.
Why true?
Sorry, false.
Why false?
Because it's 0.
It's 0. Why 0?
Because it's 1 minus 1.
Why 1 minus 1?
Number.
No. Let's do something. Previous number. What's the previous number? So what that returns? What's index?
0.
0. What's 0 minus 1? Minus 1. What's numbers minus 1? Doesn't exist. So that will probably return undefined or something weird. So is 1 minus undefined equal to 1? No. That will return not a number, NaN, right? So that doesn't really make sense for now. So that condition is falsy. So what will the first iteration return? False, correct. Iteration number 2. What's the value of R consecutive? False, correct. What's the number? 3. What's the previous number? It is 1, correct, Nico? So what do we return? False. So far, here it's correct. Here that's correct. Because 1 and 3 are not consecutive. But let's continue. Iteration number 3. What's the value of R consecutive? False. What's the number? 4. What's the previous number? What do we return? True. You see the problem, right? Because the last two numbers are consecutive, that's it. We're ignoring everything else, and that's not correct, because we need to contemplate every single sequence, not only the last two numbers, not only the last pair, yeah? That's why that's not correct. But we can deal with that, So we can say, as soon as our algorithm returns false, as soon as any of the pairs is not consecutive, give up. Eh? As soon as that happens, out.
So could use fine?
You use fine. No. No. Look, you can do that. So, if the numbers are consecutive and whatever else, then check if they are still consecutive. As soon as that condition becomes falsy, what false and something returns? False. So thanks to that word, we can control that as soon as our condition became falsy, that's it, right? Or if you struggle to get used to this syntax, you can also type something like that. If they are not consecutive, return false. That's it. Else, return if that helps a bit with the readability. Will this work or not? I don't think that will work yet. And let's have a look why. It doesn't work. And it doesn't work because of, sorry, let me get rid of, well, let me explain you first. Back to the table. Iteration, let me remove stuff. Let's try to find out why that doesn't work. Can you see already? On the first iteration, we are returning false. So on iteration number 2, it didn't continue. Yeah? Based on our algorithm, we said as soon as the numbers are not consecutive, stop. Out of coincidence, on the first iteration, based on this algorithm, the numbers are not consecutive. Why? Because on the first iteration, we cannot fail. If we're evaluating number 1, is the first element, how can we fail on that step? It's impossible. So on the first number, we cannot return false. We need to skip the first iteration. Does it make sense? I think there are different ways of solving the problem. One of them is using slice. You may have seen that. So with a slice, we can remove some elements from the array. So if we do slice 1, that means get rid of the first element. But then we have the same problem. If we slice the first element, we get that. So we're ignoring the number 1. So I don't recommend that. This is going to give you problems. So how do we skip the first iteration? Can we do that? Can we say if index equal, what's the first iteration? 0, correct. Return what?
Could you just do continue and not write return at all?
You need to return something. Return true, correct, Simon. If in the first iteration, do nothing, like hey, let's go to the next one. Yeah? So let's see if that works. And then let's add another table. So let's test that. Let me get rid of the comments. Sometimes code doesn't work with comments. Don't ask me why. So if I get rid of the comments, you see, now it works. So even though to me that feels a bit like there is too much if else, but I believe this is relatively simple to read. So let's do by the final time today the iteration thingy. Iteration number 1. So what's the value of R consecutive? It's true. That's correct. What's the value of number? Say it again? Yes, sorry. Let me bring the array again. So it was 1, 3, and 4, right? So number is 1. What's the value of index? It's 0. That's correct. So, what do we return? Say it again? Why true, Max? Which line will we return? 5, 8, or 10? It's 5, correct. If I'm on the first number, I cannot compare myself against anything, right? So return what? True or false? All right, iteration number 2. What's the value of R consecutive? True. What's the value of number? What's the value of the index? 1. So then, based on that, where do we stop? Line number 5, line number 8, or line number 10?
Line number 8.
Line number 8. 10 or 8? Why 8, Cam?
Because I think that if it flags up, actually, no, I think I'm wrong.
So if you're wrong, what's the right answer?
I think it's 10.
It is 10, that's correct, yeah? Is index equal 0? No, all right, no problem at all. By the way, we can do else if you want, eh? Else, are the numbers not consecutive already? So did we fail? So what's the value of R consecutive? It is true. What's the result of negating true? False. So that won't happen, right? Here we say, if they are not consecutive, no, but they are still consecutive. So we're still alive. We're still alive. All right, so then we do else. So then we need to compare number. Number is 3. What's the previous number? Say it again, Max? Sorry, didn't get that. 1, correct. It's number 1. Because index is 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. Numbers of 0 is the previous number. So, now, what do we return? Two minus 1. Why we are doing 2 minus 1? Correct. 3 minus 1 is what? It is 2. Is 2 equal to 1? No, it's false. So we return false. But we continue. Iteration number 3. What's the value of R consecutive? It's false. What's the number? It's 4. Correct. What's the index? 2. All right, so who decides now? Do we stop on line number 5, line number 8, or line number 10? Why line number 8, Max? Correct. Correct. At this point, we failed. Well, we failed. The algorithm is clearly deterministic. Because of 2 numbers were not consecutive, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter if now we have 1 million numbers and all the following ones are consecutive. It failed already. Because it failed, there is no point of continuing, right? So, if they are not consecutive, then return false. What happened on iteration number 4? there isn't iteration number 4, it's timeout, I'm afraid. Yeah. So that's the way it works. I will strongly recommend to practice with these 2 exercises until your fingers start to bleed massively, because these 2 exercises are vital. So I will personally go through them again and again. Ideally on DevTools, adding breakpoints, stopping, analyzing the value of the variables, all these things. Any questions? Is it too complicated to run a challenge on Mondays, by the way? You feel a bit sleepy. Right, this is intermediate, right? I mean, I understand. You remember what we said the first day, right? The general speaking, first 3 weeks, beginner, next 3 weeks, starting from today, intermediate. It's normal if you find this complicated. You will see how simple it gets, yeah? So don't worry. I think, to me, these results look much better than expected. So, yeah. And of course, if you have any question, just let me know. I hope we'll have another opportunity to talk about regex. Again, regex is not as important as what we've been discussing today. So I don't really mind if you don't really understand regex, right? But at least things like for each, reduce, objects, that's vital. Yeah, that needs to be crystal clear. All right, anything else? No? Cool, so that was it.